So thank you for joining us. My name is Mara Walsh and I am your host today. I'm happy to see so many people that come back week after week for our events, and I'm sure we have some new people who will be joining us for this special Halloween edition. We have a large group online today to celebrate our Halloween week with the most appropriate tour in Transylvania. But before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. Please know that all of you in attendance are muted and there are no videos shown for the attendees. This is a little different from most of the Zoom meetings you might be accustomed to. The audio, if you need to turn up your audio or you're having issues with your audio, there's 3 ways that you can do that. 1, you could attach a headset or earbuds, and this will give you the best hearing on your devices. 2, you can turn up your computer volume. And if none of those are working, you can go to the little arrow next to your microphone button in the Zoom toolbar, and there's an audio setting there where you can turn up the output volume so that you can hear to the best capacity. Your screen, to enlarge the presentation and move me so that I'm smaller and the presentation is larger, there's a vertical bar on the toolbar. You can move that all the way to the right so the speaker is the smallest view and the presentation is the largest view. That will help you. If you're on a device like an iPad or an iPhone or a smartphone, you can swipe left or right, and that will give you the presentation view as opposed to the speaker view. Okay, so now I think we should all be optimized for the best viewing and listening results of our presentation today. I'm going to share a little bit about myself before we get going. And I'm sorry if this is repeat for some of you that have joined us in weeks past, but my name is Mara Walsh. I am in the United States and specifically between Philadelphia and New York, which is the Eastern time zone. I started leading physical tours with my travel partner, EF Tours, as a Girl Scout leader. And I take girls and their families on international destinations every summer. I've since expanded my travel program and I am now doing adult only tours as well as family friendly tours. But in the recent months, I've begun offering virtual tours like the one you're on tonight. There's a couple of reasons I started this virtual tour series. 1, I really wanted to support the tour director community during this time of no work due to travel restrictions. And 2, I really wanted to keep the excitement of travel alive for my travel group. And it has since expanded this opportunity to those of you who've learned about us through friends, family, social media, and other means. So welcome everybody. We've done several tours in the past weeks. If you've missed them, all of them are recorded and available on our website, girltraveltours.com/virtual tours. And we have several tours coming up in the future, which we would like you to know about. And on the screen, you can see a list of the ones that are coming up. We have Japan, the Highlands of Scotland, Alaska, Vienna, Berlin. We have the Canadian Rockies, Gaudi's Barcelona, and then we're looking at adding Amsterdam, Florence and Tuscany, a World War II European tour, Scandinavia, Santa Fe, Switzerland, Iceland, and more to follow in 2021. As long as you're interested in viewing these tours, we will continue to produce them for you. And you can register for future tours on my website, and I'll share that link in the chat after I'm done my introduction here so that you have it. But today, given the fact that it's Halloween week, we're off to explore the myths and legends of Transylvania. Before we get going, I want to share with you a few ways for you to interact with us during the event. 1, you can feel free to ask questions about the tour and the tour director by using the Q&A on the Zoom toolbar. Anything that's asked in the questions region, we will be going over with the tour director after the tour, and she'll be addressing those questions. If you want to chat with me directly and you have something to put in that is not a question, but more like a comment or something that you want to share with me, use the chat function. I'll do my best to monitor the chat function here on Zoom as well as on Facebook, the live feed, so that I can kind of go back and forth and see what's up and address the questions and comments. Okay, so I always like to start the tour with an interactive poll. So I'm going to do that at this time. I'm going to launch the poll, and it just gives us an understanding of what your connection is with Transylvania and Romania. So I've been and I love it. I have a trip booked. I plan to go in the future. I'm interested in considering it for the future, or I'm solely interested in experiencing it virtually. I'm going to let more of you answer this question so I get a decent percentage, but it looks like that many people are interested in it and considering it for the future. I'm going to hit the end poll at this point so that we can see the results, and I'm going to share it with the audience so that you can see more than 50% is interested in going to Transylvania or Romania in the future, where we have a lot of folks that come for our virtual tours every week. So thank you for being here. So before we move on, oh, sorry, I'm just got held up there on my on the poll. So regardless of how much you know about Romania or Transylvania, we hope to enhance that on this virtual tour today, and I'm sure that it will be done. A tour would never be complete without a fantastic tour director. A tour director is like a personal concierge who stays with your group from start to finish, arranges for all of the logistics and all the activities that you're going to do. And they share a world of knowledge with you so that you can have a stressful, fun, and adventurous trip. These are by far the most important people in a group. And if we're not traveling, these tour directors have no work. So I'll share with you a little bit later in the chat and during the Q&A where you might tip the tour director if you're so inclined. I'm hoping that this virtual tour will not only reignite our desire to travel, but allow a tour director to do what she does best, which is share her knowledge and passion for travel. Before I hand over the event to our tour director today, I know many of you found us virtually on Facebook, and I just wanted to give you a shout out for thanking you for joining us. But also I wanted to give a little bit of a warning out there. I know that there are several unscrupulous people on Facebook trying to promote fake events and copying pages of legitimate people and events like myself, and they're asking for credit cards. Please, please do not ever give a credit card for a free event. My virtual tour presentations do not require credit cards to join, and you can always safely access our events through our website, which is girltraveltours.com. Okay, so back to our tour. Today, you can expect an amazing educational and fun virtual tour presentation featuring Transylvania, which is in Romania. Our guide today comes from Romania and is the co-owner and operator of Romanian Thrills Tour Company. And after this virtual tour, I bet you are like me and want to add Romania onto your bucket list, so you'll know who to contact. So at this point, I'm honored to introduce you to and hand over this event to our amazing tour director and my new friend from Romania, Georgiana. So Georgiana, I'm gonna take over. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen.
Hi,
how are you? Welcome.
Good.
So I'm gonna leave it to you. I'm gonna go on mute and I'm gonna let you take over for your tour, and you can have at it.
I'm gonna share my screen in a second. Okay. Okay. I think this is it. Hello, everyone. First of all, Mara, thank you for that really beautiful introduction. I am really humbled to see how many people are interested to find out more about Transylvania alongside us. This is going to be a really fun tour, a good mix of a little bit of history, but also the legends and myths that you've probably heard of and some stuff that you haven't heard of. And I'm really happy to be the one conducting this tour for you. As you can see, I hope you can see from my screen, we have 11 stops today, and I'm gonna go right into the story. Before we start going into what Transylvania is and its myths and legends, I want to tell you that this presentation is a little bit of everything. So we have videos, we have photos, but in case some of you experience some lag with the videos, please let us know in the chat and we can switch to just photos because I want every one of you to have a good experience. Also, this recording is also going to be available for those of you that want to watch us on Halloween. And we also have so many surprises for you. First of all, I'm going to start with a little bit of a background because I know Romania is such a hidden country. Most of you don't really know much of it except the vampires and Dracula. So first, let's see the part of the map of Europe, and let's find Romania on the map. So it's right here in Central Eastern Europe. It's bordered by Hungary to the west, Serbia, Bulgaria, the Black Sea to the east, Moldova, and Ukraine. As you can see, it's not a big country. It's not a small country. There's 18 million of us living here and 10 millions living abroad. And historically, Romania has been split in 3 different regions. It wasn't always called Romania. That only happened in the past 100 years. We have Transylvania to the west, which is the most popular region by far. We have Moldavia to the east, and then we have Wallachia to the south. The Transylvania and Moldova are still called the same today. Wallachia lost its name, it's called differently today, but I would like you to remember its name because it's important for our story later. So today, I want you to imagine that you're actually on a tour in Transylvania. You decided to come for Halloween 2020 to visit the birthplace of the vampire myth. Unfortunately, coronavirus happened, but you managed to escape it somehow. So you're here, I'm your local guide. I am your local fixer, and you are set to discover the myths and legends and the truth and reality behind those myths and legends, its origin. So we are on a journey, on an itinerary that will start right here in Brașov. This is a city found in the middle of Romania. And from there, we're going to travel to Bran, which is the location where you've heard Dracula's castle is found in. From Bran, we're going to travel to SIGHISOARA, which is one of the last inhabited medieval citadels in Europe. And we're going to find out more who was born there, which important character in our history. From SIGHISOARA, we want to find out more a little bit about rural Transylvania, about the villages that you maybe have heard of how they're so frozen in time. And we travel to Biertan, home to one of the most beautiful fortified churches in our country. From Biertan, we go further up to Cluj-Napoca. I have a little surprise for you here. I'm going to tell you all about it later. And from Cluj, we travel down to Corvin's Castle, which is one of the most haunted castles in Europe. Or so they say. You're going to discover if that's true or not later. From Corvin's Castle, we travel to Poianad, which is the location of the real lair, the home of Vlad the Impaler, our most popular ruler. And we're going to cross the mountains, taking Transfăgărășan Road into Sibiu, which will be our last stop, the last medieval city that we visit before you take off to your home. If you're ready to go, I'm ready. But before we start our trip, our journey, our adventure together, I have another surprise for you. I want you to do a scavenger hunt tonight. I have prepared a quiz with information that you will find all throughout our tour tonight. I know you can Google it, but please don't if there's no fun in that. Mara is going to share the link in the chat, in the Zoom chat, also for those watching on Facebook Live. It will be probably pinned in the comments. You have a few seconds to go over it. All of the questions have photos attached to them, so it's easier for you to follow them. And yeah, just string along with me, and I promise you, you'll find all the correct answers. For those of you that put in the effort and try to get the perfect score, there's a surprise. You can enter to win a gift from us at the end. It's gonna be fun. So let's do it together. All right, so first stop, Brașov. You have arrived in Brașov. I am going to come and pick you up at the train station as your local guide.
Can I jump in for a second? Before we get started, do you mind if we take the music down? Because I think that everybody's hearing it at a different volume and it's distracting from your voice.
Okay, no problem.
All right, great, thanks.
All right. All right. So we have arrived in Brasov. You have arrived by train. You took the night train from Budapest, which is actually the capital of Hungary, traveled for 12 hours just to reach Transylvania and to reach Brasov, the start point of your tour. If you don't know, that's how Jonathan Harker in Dracula's novel also traveled to Transylvania. And I am there to meet you. But before we arrive at your accommodation, where I'm going to take you a little bit later on our trip there, in the car, so to say, I want to share a little bit of the story of the people that made Transylvania what it is today. So in medieval times, Transylvania was settled by German colonists. I have here a photo from the 19th century, of course. It depicts the Saxon community that was living here during Sunday Mass. But there's actually a really nice folk story related to how the Saxons came from Western Europe to the wild and unknown place that was Transylvania. And that's the story by Brothers Grimm, the Pied Piper. So the story of the Pied Piper starts in a little town in Germany called Hameln. The people in Hameln had a very bad rat infestation. There were rodents everywhere, and they've tried all the methods to get rid of them, but they couldn't. As you can see, there were rats on top of their tables. So they're absolutely desperate until one day actually, that a Pied Piper came to their town and went to the city council and told them, if you give me this sum of money, I promise to get rid of all the rats in town. The city council, of course, looked at him. He was, humble looking, strange looking. They thought it was a scam, and they said, yeah, sure, you can have all the money you want, just get us rid of the rats. So the Pied Piper started playing his flute, and millions of rodents from all nooks and crannies in the village flooded to him. And he continued his journey to the river, where all the rats fell in and drowned. So the villagers were absolutely ecstatic. Their village was, was finally free of the rats. The Pied Piper wanted his reward, so he went to the city council, and they denied him the money. They said, no, we were just joking. We are not going to give you anything. Disappointed and angry, the Pied Piper waited for Sunday Mass when all the adults were in church so that he could play another song. So all of the children that were playing at the time followed him, and he left the village and took the children along with him. And it is said that they had followed the Pied Piper for a very long time until they reached Transylvania, sometimes going underground, sometimes going in caves. Most of the Saxon cities in Transylvania claim that it was there that they finally popped out of. However, we know that the children from Hameln have all disappeared, arrived in Transylvania, and that's the story of how the Saxons came here. And that's also backed by the Brothers Grimm. They said that their story is related to the Saxon colonists. The reality tells us that they were brought here by King Andrew II, which you have in photo right now. He was in trouble. He was attacked by the Mongols, and he needed some help to defend his borders. So he looked towards the Saxon colonists in the West, as they were very hardworking. They were good at building communities. But you have to ask yourself, why would people want to come here? If you were to be given the chance to move to a foreign, completely savage place, what would you say? What would compel you to come here? It was money, of course. And the Saxons were given rights, autonomy, a lot of land, and privileges altogether in exchange of their military obligations to the crown. And Transylvania in medieval times was not known as Transylvania, but rather as Siebenbürgen. I have the name here. In direct translation from German, it means 7 cities. And they mark the 7 most important fortifications found in Transylvania at the time. One of them was Kronstadt or Brașov, the city in which we are today. And you can see their fortifications, the Saxon fortifications, are spread all throughout Transylvania. All right, so we have finally arrived to your accommodation, which is found in the council square of Brașov. This is the center of the old town. And I have here a video of the main square of the city. Of course, it's taken during our times, but it's just to give you a feel of how the city looks like, of what it means to stroll through its streets. Brașov was started by the Saxons because it was a very good commercial location. It was at the crossroads of commercial routes, different provinces and empires all around it, and they saw the opportunity in doing their trade there. They started having an annual market, first they've increased the frequency, and in the 15th century, they just built a settlement there, and that's how Brașov was created. Another important landmark in the council square, where you're going to stay for the night, is the Black Church. For the Saxons, religion was very important, and that's why you will always find a church in the middle of the city as well. This particular church was planned to be grand because they wanted to gather new worshipers, as it was a trade route and many people passed by. It's very grand if you look at it today, but it's not as grand as it was intended to be. The patron saint of the church is Saint Mary, but we know it as the Black Church because during its history, it was almost destroyed by a fire in the 17th century, where only the walls and the vestry remained. You can see this is a picture from the side wall where the bricks are all blackened, and that's what gave it its name in the end. It went through major restoration and it's still restored today. Another thing that I want to mention here is the picture of the Black Madonna. So I did mention that the saint patron of the Black Church is Saint Mary. There's a picture that survived the fire miraculously inside. It's just that her dress got darkened by the smoke, and the people regarded it as God's divine intervention, so to say. So Black Madonna, Black Church, and we have the Ropers Street next to it. The townsmen found a way to prevent or be able to reach the fires faster. So they built a lot of narrow streets all throughout Brașov. You're looking at the narrowest street, one of the narrowest streets in Europe, and it's this is called the Rope Street. And at the end of it, we have a statue of Lady Rope, which is basically a woman clad in rope. As you can see here, someone left her a little bit too much, and her left arm is actually missing. They took it with them, which was actually pointing to the entrance to the street. Our walking tour continues with what I call one of the most important stories and the major legend, urban drama of Brașov, and that's Caterina's story.
Okay, before we get into that, Georgiana, I have been overruled with so many comments that the music is awesome. Is there any way we can bring the music back, but just maybe at a lower volume?
Yeah, this is the lowest I can give it. This is actually level 1. So below this, there's not much I can do.
All right, so there's a lot of yay for the music. So I'm going with the majority right now, and we'll just do a level 1. And if you have to speak louder, that's what we'll do.
Okay. Do you think it's better right now?
Honestly, I think the music is great. It just influxes from lower to higher, and that's probably what people are hearing on their computers. So we're just going to go with it because I think it adds a really good background, and I think it gives it a flavor that we want for this conversation.
Yes, there are some songs that are a little bit mellow. There are some who are a little bit more epic, and I understand where they're coming from. I'll try to raise my voice if that happens. Just let me know if there's any problems. Okay, so back to our story. I was telling you that my favorite story in Brașov is actually Caterina's story, and I have here 2 portraits. One on the left You might recognize him, I think. His name is Vlad the Impaler. And on the right, we have a beautiful blonde Saxon girl. Katerina was the daughter of a merchant residing in Brasov. And while she was taking some goods to a defense tower nearby, she caught the eye of Vlad the Impaler, who was in town with some military business. And he rushed to help her. Well, that was very unusual from a ruling prince to go to the aid of a peasant girl. And his officers were completely baffled. But then they noticed the way Vlad looked at her and they understood the situation. They wanted to warn him. They said, if you go into a relationship with this girl, you will face great problems, a very complicated situation, but he wouldn't hear of it. He wanted Katerina. So they started a 20-year-long relationship, and she became the most known mistress in the history of Romania. Vlad was married at the time, I forgot to mention that, and she was 17 and he was 34, but that didn't stop their love, and they had 5 kids together. I did mention that Vlad was married, and I want to put some things in perspective for you. So we have here his wife. Her name was Justina Szilágyi. She was of Hungarian descent. And as you can see, she was a very, very beautiful young lady. But this is actually a depiction of the actress that actually played his wife in the Dracula TV show. The way his wife looked like is this. This is the reality. So as you can see, picturing romance and medieval stories can look very nice, but the reality can be very different. In any case, Vlad loved Katerina very much. Some people say that she was the love of his life. And whenever he was away from her, he would be very angry, very jealous. And some people attributed his very cruel methods of punishment to his periods when he was away from Katerina. Today, you can find Katerina's portrait hanging above the door of one of our favorite boutique accommodations in Brasov, Villa Katerina. It's actually the house where she used to live 500 years ago in Brasov. So we are at the end of your walking tour in Brasov, your first walking tour through Transylvania. You've just had a 12-hour journey. You're completely tired. So what better thing to do than go for dinner? In Romania, we have a tradition to start our meals with a little bit of Palinka, with a shot of Palinka. I have a shot here next to me, just for example purposes. And it really, we say that it washes your stomach, that it stimulates your hunger. We can make it either from plums, from apples. You can use all sorts of fruits. It really doesn't matter. The taste is similar to moonshine or to schnapps, maybe. We have different variations. And for your first meal, I definitely recommend you go with the bean soup. This bean soup is served with smoked meats, usually pork. The favorite vegetable of Romanians is pork. If you ever find yourself in Romania, you will see that that's true, and you'll find it everywhere. It's absolutely delicious. I cannot deny that, so sorry. And it's served inside a loaf of bread. Very hearty, very filling, the perfect meal for you to finish your first day in Transylvania. So you go to bed thinking that you've discovered a little bit of the life of Vlad the Impaler and some legends of the place, but you're eager for more. So next day, we're going to see the most famous castle in the history of Romania, and that's Bran Castle. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this castle, or how many of you have seen it, but this is how it looks today. This castle dates back to the 13th century when it was just a rock, pretty much. This has a very good vantage location to overlook the surroundings. So inside it, it's an actual rock. So the Teutonic Knights during the Crusades came here and built a wooden settlement to help defend the realm against the attackers. Fast forward, they were defeated, the wooden settlement was destroyed, but when the kings of Hungary brought in the Saxon colonists, they decided to take advantage of the place for commercial purposes. So King Louis I was the one that told the Saxons in BRASOV that he was giving them the privilege to reinforce the borders, to build this fortification in his name, but with their own resources. I don't know about you, but the Saxons definitely jumped at the occasion. And you would probably wonder why. I mean, it's not much of a privilege to build something with your own resources, but being on a trade route and charging custom duty for all the goods that passed through it, the Saxons became crazy rich. So they became so rich that they even loaned money back to the kings of Hungary when they needed it. And when they couldn't pay the money back, they had to give up BRAN Castle forever in the ownership of the colonists, of the Saxons in BRASOV. We have a few, you can see the inside of the castle. So today the castle doesn't look like it used to in medieval times. It was transformed by Queen Mary in the 20th century, and she made it her home. So that's why it has this comfortable, homey feeling. It used to be much more medieval and gory looking. And I want to show you this photo here. This is important. This used to be a mayor of BRASOV from the 17th century. It's important because it's the only historical proof that we have of how BRAN Castle used to look like back in the days. These are the Teutonic Knights. Oops. Okay, the Teutonic Knights, they came in. This is how the castle used to look like, as I've told you about the rock. This is King Louis, is the one that that gave the Saxons the opportunity to build BRAN Castle. And this is a drawing portraying how the custom used to look like and this is BRAN Castle on top, and the Saxon merchants. Okay, so you visited the castle. You are not happy. The castle doesn't really look the way you expected it to look. It looks very much like a home. It was redesigned by a queen. But I want to tell you a little bit the story of Bram Stoker and how BRAN Castle became so popular. So Bram Stoker is an Irish writer whose most popular writing was obviously Dracula's novel. He was looking for his next bestseller. So he needed to have 3 things in order to write a very good book. He succeeded. Dracula is actually one of, I think it's only second to the Bible in terms of sales. And those 3 things that he needed are a location. And he found that in Transylvania, its products and its people, a book written by Charles Boner, a historian that actually traveled to Transylvania and depicted BRAN Castle in his book. Quick side note here, Bram Stoker never came to Transylvania. He only saw a photo of the BRAN Castle in this book. He needed the folk stories to go with it, so he inspired himself from Émilie Girard's book, Transylvanian Superstitions, and he needed a character. And that character is the bloody, ruthless ruler, Vladimir Taylor. Okay, so what you see here is actually the mythological creature in Romanian folklore that inspired vampires, that inspired Bram Stoker. They are called Strigoi, and I know you've heard Strigoi before. If you read, just like me, vampire novels or just watch vampire movies, you've definitely heard this term. And they are troubled spirits that come back from the dead to torment the living. Normally, they don't look like the way that vampires or the romantic vision that we have of vampires today. They have a tail, they have hairy bodies, but they've inspired the myth of vampire because they feed on the blood of their victims. People that turn Strigoi come from different situations. So in Romanian mythology, we believe that you turn Strigoi if you're the 7th child of the same sex within a family, if you are a child that was unbaptized and died before baptism, if you've led a life of sin, if you were generally a bad person during your life, or if you died and some animal crossed you while you were still in the coffin, but before being put underground. So we have several ways to deal with Strigois. You will mostly find these stories in rural Romania. They have pretty much lost their meaning in the cities. I have here an old lady holding some iron nails. There are several ways to protect yourself from Strigoi. Of course, everyone knows of garlic, of silver crosses, but little of you know that if you put an iron nail underneath its tongue, you can prevent him from haunting you. Sorry if you can't stand weirder looking photos, but we have a mummified heart and a stake. So you've heard of having to stake a Strigoi to kill him, to make him not haunt you anymore. And we had a case of vampirism in the 40s. And they've preserved the heart just to showcase the tradition. There's another thing that you can do. You can put an iron piece of metal through the heart of the Strigoi, or you can turn him backwards inside his coffin. So when he wakes up, he actually goes towards the afterlife and not towards his victim. This is an actual photo from, so people, to protect themselves, they hang garlic by their windows. And the night where the Strigois come out in Romania is actually the 31st of November, which is St. Andrew's night. It's pretty much our equivalent of Halloween, just a month later. And that's when all evil spirits, not just Strigois, come and roam the earth and trying to haunt the living. Okay. I just want to quickly give you a brief introduction of the royal century that Bran Castle went through. That's important because I know that when you will come to visit and see it, that's all you're going to see. So the royal family of Romania is here. We have Queen Elizabeth on the left, King Carol on the right. Romania had 4 kings, and that's a photo from that time of Bran Castle. And Bran Castle was actually completely remodeled by Queen Mary. She was the 2nd queen of Romania. She was most loved by the Romanian people because she was a very kind person. She was the one that turned Bran Castle into a hospital during the First World War. So for her efforts in alleviating the pains of the Romanian people, the Saxons in BRASOV decided to give the castle to her. That was actually the great chance of the castle, because for the past 100 years before she came to Romania, it was pretty much in disarray. No one took care of it. After it lost its commercial purpose in the industrial period, no one took care of it anymore. So it's pretty much a ruin. So the queen came in. That's a photo of her standing in the courtyard of Bran, and she just pretty much made a Gothic medieval castle look nice. So she planted plants everywhere. And you can see her with her 3 daughters in traditional Romanian costumes. I've chosen to share this photo with you because I want you to take a look at all the wooden features. These resemble German castles, and they were added by the Queen alongside the architect that took care of the renovation in Bran Castle. Nowadays, because we are very close to Halloween, Bran Castle hosts every year, without exception. COVID is not an exception either, because they are going to host a Halloween party this Saturday, and that's Halloween at Bran. You can enjoy this castle, and you can see actors impersonating Vlad the Impaler. Now, this is not my favorite actor that ever played Vlad the Impaler in Bran Castle. He's a little bit goofy looking, and someone did a pretty bad eyeliner situation on his eyebrows and mustache. I want to tell you about the first time I went to Halloween at Bran, and that was back in 2012. We did a treasure hunt all throughout the castle. So the castle was open at night. You had pretty much just as you have today, a quiz. And I had to find those particular items all throughout the castle, which was completely decorated for Halloween. People were in costumes, and they had actors impersonating Vlad the Impaler and the most important mythological creatures like Strigoi or werewolves, or the ladies on the right, they represent Yele. Yele in Romanian mythology are fairies that come out at night in the full moon. You're not supposed to look at them, because if you do, then they'll start punishing you. And until this year, they also hosted a party outside of the castle that went on throughout the night. That party is not happening this year, of course. It's just the castle being decorated for Halloween, and you get the chance to wear a costume in Bran. All right, so you visited Bran Castle, you've experienced Halloween at Bran Castle, which is it's more than most people do for Halloween, and you got hungry again. So if you find yourself in the area, definitely give pork fat spread a try. So it's pretty much pork cracklings, pork belly, deep fried, blended to make it look like a spread, and then you serve it with red onion. Some people put paprika on it, depending on how spicy you want it, and it's absolutely delicious. The bread that you see here is probably potato bread. Potato bread is a regional bread served mostly in Transylvania, very filling and very, very delicious. And of course, we have Palinka, the brandy that I told you about earlier, made out of apples, and it's branded with Bran because the village is it's a very important mountain village outside of it being the location of Bran Castle. So you visited Bran, you finally saw Dracula's castle. It's your second day in Transylvania, and you want to find out more. You've heard that SIGHISOARA, the last medieval citadel in Romania, is actually home to some more myths and legends related to the character that you're looking for, of Vlad the Impaler. The Citadel is part of the 7 cities that were Transylvania in medieval times. It wasn't one of the richest, it wasn't one of the biggest one, but it is one of the most important ones today because it's so well preserved. People still live in it today, and there's still Transylvanian Saxons there, even though in very little numbers. And it was initially constructed in the 13th century. It started off with the church on the hill, which is the Gothic masterpiece of SIGHISOARA, and it continued with all the historical buildings that you see all around. It's a very romantic location. People like it because of the colorful houses and of the cobble street paved stones that you can stroll through. And it really gives you that medieval feel. You feel like you're in a movie when you walk through SIGHISOARA. That was the covered staircase that led up to the church on the hill. And we are looking now at the clock tower, which is the iconic, if you Google SIGHISOARA, that's probably the picture that you're gonna get, the clock tower, the entrance through the citadel, and the colorful roof of it. This roof was added by the Austrians. It wasn't part of the Saxon heritage. SIGHISOARA is definitely one of my favorite cities in Romania, and I try to take all of my tourists there because it's really worth seeing. Another thing that I want to share to you about the Saxon merchants is that they built fortifications. So whenever they would start a new settlement, they decided where the church would be, and then they would start building a wall around it. So we have here a medieval map of SIGHISOARA. This is the church on the hill that I've mentioned earlier. It needed to have a strategic position because they needed a place to hide in case of attacks. That was the main purpose, not only as a place to go and pray on Sunday, because they were religious in the end, but that was the place where they would hide their riches, their children, their women, in case they were under attack. SIGHISOARA was a smaller fortification. It only had 1 defensive wall and 14 towers all around it, and it was guarded by the merchants of the city. I don't know if you know, but in medieval Europe, guilds were very common. So craftsmanship was a very important part of the economy. Being part of a guild was a very honorable position. You wanted to be part of a guild because that automatically meant you had status, you had money, and you could pass it on to your son, so you were set for life and beyond. So being part of a guild was being part of a trade union, being sort of like being part of a trade union or a secret society. And then in SIGHISOARA, we had one of the most important guilds. I have here the coat of arms of some of them. We have tailors on the left, we have millers on the right. They were the ones in charge of defending the towers of the citadel. They enjoyed so many privileges, so many rights. They had to fulfill the military obligations to the crown of Hungary that I've mentioned earlier. So they were the ones in charge of defending the city. This is the Carpenters Guild coat of arms. I have here the Cooper's coat of arms. As you can see, they're very beautifully inlaid, highly decorated. They would put this coat of arms on the houses they lived in. The names of the street in SIGHISOARA bear the name of the guild, and also all of the towers. And here I have the coat of arms of the shoemakers, and it stands right next to one of the oldest houses in SIGHISOARA. As you can see, it dates to back to 1568, and it's today a beautiful boutique accommodation that we choose to stay in when we go there. All right, so I have a poll. Mara, if you would like to help me here, I want you to guess which was the richest guild in medieval times. Who do you think made the most money? Mara?
Okay, Georgiana, I'm trying my best. Give me 1 second.
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna launch the poll now.
So we have 4 answers: blacksmiths, goldsmiths, tailors, or carpenters.
We're gonna give it
I'm so curious to see what you guys say. I'm sure you're not gonna get it right.
So it looks like we have about 60% of the people, they're still voting going on. So I'm going to let people come in and vote. It's going back and forth, but there's definitely one leader. So hopefully these people are going to get it right. I'm going to end the poll now.
All right.
Here are the results.
So most of you voted for the blacksmiths. That's not bad. Weapons, they did need weapons to defend the citadel. 17% of you for the goldsmiths. Well, that's a low percentage. I thought you would go for the goldsmiths more, to be honest, because they did deal in gold. Tailors 18% and carpenters 23%. Well, sorry to disappoint you guys, but what's the one thing that all the people need, even if they're rich or poor? It's not gold, it's not weapons, it's clothes. So the tailors were the richest guild of all times. Everyone needs clothes. All right, so I'm gonna close the results of the poll now in case it's blocking my screen. But good effort, good effort. Blacksmiths were also very rich. Okay. And we are going to move on to the most important landmark in SIGHISOARA today, and that's Lard Dracula's house. Please don't get confused. I'm not talking about Lard Dracula. I'm talking about Lard Dracula, which was actually his father. So his father, Lard Dracula, owned a house in SIGHISOARA where he stayed for a few years before he became ruler of Wallachia. Wallachia was the southern region of Romania that I told you about at the beginning at the map. And he was pretty much hiding here before he could take his rightful throne. His house is this big yellow one on the right, and it's located right next to the clock tower. So you would know he was a pretty well-off guy for those times. This is his face. You can find this fresco inside the house. Sorry, the quality is not that good. It's actually a photo off the wall, and that has been revealed after the house was restored. You can see the resemblance with his son, especially around the mustache area and the bulky eyes. And the thing that catches the eye the most is this dragon sign. Why do you think Lard Dracula had a dragon as his sign? His father had been appointed by King Sigismund of Luxembourg Let's remember this king because we are going to talk about him later. As Knight of the Order of the Dragon. In medieval times, being part of this order meant that you pledged allegiance to the Holy Roman Empire to defend Christianity in front of the Ottoman Empire. They were the major threat. They were threatening to conquer Europe, and they had to go through Wallachia and Transylvania before reaching Hungary. And once they reached Hungary, it was pretty much lost. They would have reached Europe. So that didn't, they didn't want that to happen. So he knighted a few of the ruling princes in this area as Knight of the Dragons. And Vlad Dracul was so honored by this opportunity that he took the dragon as his coat of arms. The symbol was also bared a cross on top to symbolize its connections to Christianity. And the Latin name of dragon is actually Draco or Draco. I'm going to give you a little bit of a Romanian lesson here. Draco or Dracul in Romanian means devil. So Vlad Dracul became known as the son of the devil. I think you're starting to understand where I'm going with this. Dracula is actually a way of saying that particular person is the son of. So Dracula, by adding the A at the end, means I am the son of Dracul, or the son of the devil. So he was only a baby, Vlad Dracula, Vlad the Impaler, and he was already called son of the devil, and people already thought he was a bad person. So it was actually by mistake that the commoners took this name and considered him the son of the devil, the evil one. Definitely not to miss, if you're in the area, you're visiting Vlad Dracula's house, I have a treat for you, a snack, fast food, the good kind. No, it's not the good kind. It's called langos. It's of Hungarian, it's part of the Hungarian heritage we have in Transylvania. It's pretty much fried dough served with garlic and cheese on top. Definitely not to miss. There's actually a stall, as I've said, located to the house. You can grab it while you're in there. The first thing you should do when visiting SIGHISOARA is grab the langos first and then stroll the Citadel while you eat it, because it's actually quite large. I know it looks small here, but it's big. So we visited SIGHISOARA. You were pleasantly surprised by this little town, this little medieval citadel, and you feel like you've started to find out more about Transylvania. And our next stop is through the rural communities of what made the Saxon Transylvania back in the days. Out of the many fortified churches in Transylvania, I chose to share with you Biertan. So Biertan Fortified Church was initially started in the 14th century, and it's part of the UNESCO World Heritage because of how well it's been preserved. You can see here how it dominates the landscape. And 300-400 years ago, this place used to be twice bigger than it is today. So much more important in medieval times than today. It is a vineyard region known for their winemaking capabilities. You can see the hills behind, how they were pretty much terraced, a little bit similar like in Tuscany, but of course, I'm not trying to resemble it to Tuscany. It has 3 sets of outside walls and 4 towers. There's several folk stories related to these towers and to Biertan, and that's why I chose it for today. Here we are inside of the church. The pulpit, which was carved in a single piece of stone, the organ, and the altar that you see is one of the most beautiful ones in Transylvania. It's made out of 28 different pictures. And right now I have the lock that this church is most famous for. They wanted to protect their vestry and their riches, and the lock to the vestry has actually won prizes. It was one of the best ways. It's astonishing how in medieval times they could build such a thing. So it has 19 different locks, That's actually just a piece of marvel of medieval times. Back to the outside towers, I have two legends related to them. So the first one that you have to, if you have to visit when you're here in the area, is the Marriage Tower. If you were living 400 years ago in Transylvania and you wanted to divorce your husband, it wasn't very easy. Of course, the community would get involved as they had a very tight community. You know how people talk, small places. And the local priest will also get involved. So if you would hear that you were quarreling, he would say, okay, come visit me at the church and I'll give you a spot in my tower here. It was actually a prison. So you're pretty much put for 2 weeks with your with the husband that you currently hated to share a bed, one chair, one table, one set of cutlery, one plate, one of everything. So you had to collaborate. You had to find a way to live together without fighting in that prison. And it actually worked. So they say that in 400 years, only one couple actually wanted to get divorced after spending time in marriage. So I'd say that's more success rate than therapists today. The second tower that I want to mention is the Lard Tower, or the Bacon Tower. Don't be surprised by its face. It's probably my face whenever I see food or something related to bacon. It's the place where Saxons would keep their meats over winter. They didn't have refrigerators, and they would keep everything that was of value, and food was of value, inside of the church in case of an attack, so they would have supplies. So the bacon, or all the pork, the smoked meat for the winter, was kept in this tower. But you have to ask yourself, how would you know that your neighbor wouldn't go on a different day and cut a piece from your bacon? So they had a system. Their system was to, if you went to cut a piece from the meat that you put in, you would put your sigil where you made the cut. So next time you went in, you would know no one else came and stole the bacon. Tough times if you were hungry or just, wanting to grab a bite. Another staple food that I want to share with you here are sarmale. I cannot imagine Romanian cuisine without eating sarmale. There's so many recipes for them. They're normally made out of minced meat, pork, could be beef, chicken, whatever you like. You could also do it vegetarian. It can be. We also have a vegetarian recipe in our cuisine made out of mushrooms and rice for periods of fast. And it's rolled in cabbage or vine leaves, served with polenta here in the background, and sour cream and chilies for those of you that want to eat something. They like a spicy kick. And I've chosen to pair it with white wine. If there are any Romanians watching out there, probably they'll laugh at me, but I wanted to share this brand of white wine that I personally like. It's a liliac. Liliac means bat in Romanian. It's actually a very good vineyard, a wine producing company, and we love it. It's also very funny. They have very funny drawings on it. Okay, saturated. You've had your wine. You've had sarmale. But during the dinner time, I want to share another folk story with you, also from Biertan. So I did mention that they were producing wine. Sorry for the bad quality of the photo. This is actually taken from a folk story book that I have at home. And it depicts the time when Biertan was almost conquered by some foreigners, some pillagers. The priests, because they had lots of barrels of wine inside the church, for communion purposes, of course. When they saw the enemy camps outside of the walls, they decided to just throw a barrel of wine at them inside their camp and just try to lift their spirits, so to say. The enemies were very happy to see that barrel of wine. Of course, they all drank it. They got very drunk, as you can see from here. And next day, they decided to leave. They left Biertan alone. So that's why Biertan was only conquered once in its all throughout his history. Okay, we are going to leave Saxon Transylvania for a little bit, the rural part, and go towards Cluj to Hoia Baciu. This is where things get a little bit creepy. We're gonna start to feel where all the paranormal stories and myths and legends of Transylvania come from. And this is probably, I don't know for sure, and scientists cannot agree, but it's probably one of the most haunted forests in Europe, and some say in the world. Strange things happen. The forest is called Hoia Baciu. I can write this name down for you after the tour if you want to look more into it. And it's where they say the electromagnetic field of the Earth registers all sorts of distortions, anomalies happen, people catch ectoplasms on their photos. And it's pretty much a place known for appearances. And when I say appearances, I mean that people have reported seeing strange objects in the night sky. If you were to find yourself with your family there and take a photo, upon looking at the photos, you would see humanoid silhouettes behind you that weren't there at the time you took the photo. Tracks of people appearing right before their eyes. So you would walk and then you would see tracks in front of you, but there was no one there. So overall, it can be a very strange experience. People have said that they had strange experiences there. Not only that, some people said that they experienced nausea, burns, just loss of conscience when entering the forest. This is actually the trail of a documentary done a few years ago. I highly recommend you watch it if you're interested in the subject. They actually spent the night in the forest and tried to see whether the rumors were true, whether the forest was truly haunted, whether there was paranormal activity going on in there. You're gonna have to watch it to figure that one out, but this is a photo of the trees. Nature is also crippled inside the forest. Trees experience cancer, dehydration, burns, and scientists haven't found a logical explanation for it. So we are only going to assume what's going on. The photo here, and that's the most important and most popular thing you're going to hear of this forest, is the UFO appearances. So back in the 70s, a Romanian scientist, claimed to have seen a UFO coming out of the forest. He had everything to lose if he was wrong, because we were talking about communist Romania. Of course, he lost his job when claiming that he saw his UFO. Americans came a few years later and they've documented the phenomenon themselves. So there are all sorts of pictures of UFOs circling Hoia Baciu forest today that you can find on the internet. Also, in the center of the forest, there's a place called the clearing. You can see it looks like an eye or like a gate. Some people claim that this is actually a gate to other worlds, that this is the spot where Hoia Baciu pretty much connects our reality, the Earth reality, to astral reality. So that's where the souls come in and out. I don't know whether it's truth or legend. I don't know. I'll let you decide when you come to Romania. I'll be more than happy to take you there. You're gonna have to jog by yourself inside the forest. Moving on from Hoia Baciu, our trip takes us to what they say is the most haunted castle this time. So we've been to the most haunted forest. Now we are in the most haunted castle, and that's Corvin's Castle. It's located in Hunedoara, another region of Romania, also found in Transylvania. And it's my favorite castle. We have three major castles in Romania, one of which is BRAN Castle that we've already seen. Corvin's Castle is the second, and there's the Peles Castle. Corvin Castle looks exactly like you would imagine a medieval castle to look like. It's imposing, it's big, it has a bridge over, it has a moat, it has pretty much everything. You can see how it has parts where it looks really old and parts where it looks new. That's because it's been through several stages of construction because of different owners that had the castle, and the newer part are additions from the 19th and 20th century from architects that wanted to make this castle look as medieval as possible in their romantic vision of it. Corvin Castle was built by John Hunyadi. We're going to talk about him in just a minute. He was one of the most important Transylvanian princes of those time, and he was of Romanian heritage. He was of Romanian origin. He is the one that started building this castle and made it his ruling location. And we have a photo of him here. So as I said, John Hunyadi. He has a different name in Romanian. And this is his coat of arms. I know you've heard of the name Corvin before, and it comes from the name of the raven. There's a legend tied to how John Hunyadi came to be to own castle, the Corvin's Castle. And it goes back to Sigismund of Luxembourg. If you remember him, he's the one that granted the Knight of the Dragon to Bloody Impaler's father. So he came to Transylvania one time and noticed a beautiful peasant girl. She became pregnant, and her son was John Hunyadi. Sigismund didn't want to shame the girl, so he found a suitable husband for her and told her that when the child will be of age and would be able to claim his throne, he should find him at his court in Hungary. So he gave her a ring. The woman kept the ring, gave it to John when he was of age, of John Hunyadi. And one time when he was out hunting with his father, a raven noticed, he put the ring aside on a stone. He didn't want to ruin it. And the raven noticed the shine on the ring and stole it from that stone. When John saw that, he knew he pretty much lost his claim to the throne. So he quickly grabbed the bow of his father, shot the raven so he would drop the ring, and got it back. When he went to Sigismund to claim his throne, he told his father how he managed to retrieve the ring, and he decided that his coat of arms will be the raven with a ring in its beak. The Latin name of a raven is Corvus or Corvin. That's where the name Corvin comes from, the Latin name of the raven. John Hunyadi was married to Elizabeth of Szilágy. She was of Hungarian origin, and together they had this is another coat of arms of John Hunyadi. And together they had a son named Matthias Corvinus. I chose this photo. I find it very funny. But he was actually one of the greatest kings of Hungary. He ruled for a very long time, and he is the one that brought Renaissance to Transylvania and to Hungary. He loved arts and sciences a lot, and he invested a lot in those. You can see the raven here in the left side on his coat of arms as emperor. So you decide to go exploring the castle a little bit more, and I have two stories to share with you. The castle is quite big. It has a lot of rooms. It can take half a day to stroll through it properly, but I would like to draw attention to the fountain. The fountain is said to have been dug by 3 Turkish soldiers taken captive by John Hunyadi. Remember, he was battling the Ottoman Empire, so Romanian provinces were always battling the Ottomans. They were our major foes, so he took them captive. He needed a source of drinking water inside the castle, And he said, okay, if you manage to find water in this rock, I will grant you your freedom. It took the Turkish soldiers 15 years to find water. And by the time they actually found it, John Hunyadi was dead. So they went to his wife, Elizabeth, the one that I showed to you earlier, and claimed their freedom. Elizabeth was a little bit more ruthless than her husband, so she decided to just kill them. They were useless to her. And there's an inscription on the side of the wall that says, supposedly says, you have water, but you have no soul. In fact, that inscription just says the name of the Turkish soldier and how he was a prisoner to the Romanians. And here you are looking at the bear pit. So there has to be a reason for which this castle is called the most haunted. And that's because a lot of people have died in here. There were hundreds, if not thousands of people that found their death inside this castle. And that's a little bit unusual because all the other castles that you hear of are normally either royal residences or just, you know, properties of very wealthy people. But Corvin was used for its purpose. It had 4 different towers that acted as prisons, and it also had underground prisons. And they constantly had hungry bears in the bear pit where people would get thrown a lot. Yeah, not very pleasant. And there weren't, you know, I know you've heard of people getting killed by animals before in Roman times in the Colosseum, but lions were a little bit scarce in Transylvanian forests, so they had to deal with bears. We've reached the more gory part of the tour. You decided to check the torture rooms and the prisons as well. Here is the underground prison. Thankfully, this is just a doll here, but it looks real, and it just gives you a feel of how badly the people were suffering and how cruel they were during medieval times. Not only that, there were other places inside the prison called l'oubliette. That's a French term. It means to forget. So you were pretty much forgotten inside that dark spot with no water, nothing to eat until you probably find your end. So that was not the most pleasant way to go. Not only that, the prison was stacked. So there were cages of prisoners stacked on top of each other. I don't have a photo. Because what you see today is just a cage, an iron cage, so you have to use your imagination, but you would just pray you weren't on the bottom cage. They weren't allowed bathroom breaks or anything like that. Corvin Castle is also the place where you can find out more about different torture methods used then. And here is another doll. It tells the story of Anne. She was found guilty of adultery. She cheated on her husband, and she was put on this chair. As you can see, there's nails on its bottom and on her hands, on her arm sides, and eventually she was beheaded. And I have an exhibition for you. Before we start this video, I'm going to turn off the music because the video has its own sounds. This is an exhibition that you will find next to the castle. Definitely recommend it. It displays all the torture methods with mannequins, so you can really understand what it meant to be punished. There are all sorts of swords on the walls. People hanging by their hands, different torture methods. And we are mostly talking about prisoners of war, but if you were found guilty of any crime, and it could have been just a simple crime like stealing something from the market, you would have ended up punished. the stretch wheel, where you would be put and stretched out until you would die. On the right side, we saw the pillory. The pillory was usually a torture method put on a central square, reserved for witches, for adulterous women. Here in the back, we have impaled people. We will talk about the impalement a little bit later. It's made popular as a torture method by Vlad the Impaler. A chair of torture. Another man being completely stretched out on the wheel this time, but this wheel also had metal insertions to make it more hurtful. And the prison that I was telling you about. Unfortunately, for medieval times, justice was not always fair. You were at the mercy of the ruling prince, and you didn't have much chance. If he thought you were guilty, you could have been innocent, but you still ended up tortured. And another thing, to finish our tour here in Corvin's Castle, is that this location is actually loved by film producers today. It's used, it has been used in many movies, and one of the most recent ones is The Nun, which came out in 2019, Fright Night Part 2, Ghost Rider, and Dragonheart. These are just 4 that I picked out that I liked, but there are many more out there. Okay, so from Corvin Castle, we are going to move forward with our tour towards Poenar Fortress. So we visited Bran Castle, what people think it's Dracula's castle, but it's, that's weird. Sorry guys, I don't know, but the light just turned off. I'm just gonna go check it out real quick. I'll be right back.
That's enough. I had enough of this Corvin Castle and enough of this tour. What is going on? Aren't you bored already? We're talking about Matthias Corvinus. Everybody knows that he imprisoned me in his dungeons. Why did he do it? Enough with these stories. I cannot talk anymore. He knew that he needs to take money from the Pope to fight the Turks. Instead of gathering an army and fighting along me against the Turks, he decides to put me in prison and forge a letter that had my name on it, that I am allying with the Turks. Never, never. So I've heard a lot of you have an obsession with me. I guess I don't need any introduction. We'll start first with a drink for every Saxon word that we heard during this tour. Because if we were to drink one sip every time we hear the word Saxon, we would probably not make it throughout the tour. So if you were thinking where Georgiana might be, don't worry, I took great care of her. She's taking a nap right now. And in here, I'll just have my dinner. It's fresh blood. So we'll have to see what she was planning to say about me to the world. Poenar Fortress, good were the times. A lot of you guys think that I stayed in Bran Castle. That was tiny, that was small, that didn't have a good vantage point. Look at this beauty. This fortress still stands 500 years later. And I built it with the help of the disloyal boyars. It wasn't really help, it was more like forced labor. But we needed to fight the Turks. We needed a defensive system. So we needed to put our people to work. You can still visit it today anyway, if you wish. It's more than 1,400 steps. So you better train for it from now if you manage to come over here. So going forward, I'm very curious what's happening in here. Oh, this is not one of the best pictures I had. I think I look better on Zoom or on Facebook. And a lot of people know that my name comes from the dragon, Lard Dracula. But think about it. A lot of people didn't have HBO or Netflix like you guys have right now. And they didn't know what a dragon looks like. It's all the rage right now to have dragons around. But back in the days, people would associate it with the devil. I'd rather have a Game of Thrones story written about me, and maybe people would portray me in a more positive light. Oh, this is my beloved territory, Wallachia. Look at this. And Moldavia next to it was ruled by my cousin, Stephen the Great. Bucharest over here, maybe you guys can see it. It wasn't the capital of Romania. Bucharest was not the capital until recently. I had my capital in Târgoviște. Maybe you've seen some pictures with that already. But mind you, Bucharest was born by my hand. I was the guy who put the stamp on the first official document in 1459 when Bucharest was born. I was mentioning that place because I also have a princely court right there in Bucharest. So you can check that out as well. Hopefully it will be restored because there's not much to it right now until you guys come over here. Oh, there's a picture with my brother Radu. Don't think I am so gracious. Look at him dancing. We were in the Ottoman court, in the Sultan's court, because our father sent us there in exchange as prisoners. And yes, I'm the handsome guy to the left. However, my nickname got to be Vlad the Impaler, and not Radu the Handsome as my brother. He spent too much time with the Sultan, as you can see the Sultan in the background, and people thought that he was also part of his harem. So probably they didn't call him Radu the Handsome for no reason. Oh, this is the comet Halley. I remember that very well. You see, everyone around me was afraid there's a light coming from the sky, but I was not afraid. I knew that was meant to be for me to take up on my throne. And so I did. In 1456, I took my throne, and this is actually the picture from Târgoviște I was looking for. It's here. This is Kindiei Tower on the left, or the tower where the sun sets. It's the princely court in Târgoviște, the capital, the medieval capital of Bucharest. Criminal or hero? Really now? People are still asking this question in 2020. Okay, let's see. This picture is not even real. It's colored. We didn't have colored on paper back in the days. These pictures were printed by the Transylvanian Saxons. Oh, wait, Saxons. You have to drink with me. This picture was actually depicted because my fellow Transylvanian Saxons, of course, were envious on me because I was dating Katharina. She was a Saxon, she was beautiful, and I had a wife, so I can't really blame them. They had some connections in Germany, and it was in the same time that the printing press was invented in the 1400s. So what did they do? They started spreading leaflets with me, impaling people, torturing people. You see someone cutting, dismembering some people in there, boiling them. Such cruel techniques. As you can see, I'm enjoying the blood, but I don't have anyone tortured around me. Trust me, Georgiana is safe, okay? So these were highly exaggerated stories they started. While this one is a story that I actually created. This was a story regarding the beggars and the ill, the terminally ill, and the people who couldn't work or who couldn't fight against the Turks. And I knew I had only one chance to protect our land in Wallachia. So one night I asked them if they want all their suffering to be gone. I invited them to a feast with free food and free drinks. Of course, they accepted because they either couldn't or they didn't want to work. I set the inn on fire after I locked the doors, and this is how we managed to get an army and to get in shape for the future battles with the Ottomans. I know, it's a very difficult decision, but people still hate me for that. Remember, these are medieval times, and everybody was cruel during those times. Probably me, I was enjoying it more than others, it's true. This picture I remember very fondly of. Some messengers from Turkey, from the Ottoman Empire, some Turkish messengers came in here to ask for the tribute. But I said it's enough with all the tribute. Our country was starving. We couldn't send any more young men to the Ottoman court, so they will train as janissaries. They will always ask us for young adults to be part of the future Ottoman army. And I said that was enough. When they came to ask for tribute in my own courtyard, they wouldn't take the hats off. So I decided to make sure those hats will stay on their heads forever. Because in my court, the tradition is you will take your hat off if you do come to see the Prince of Wallachia. So I nailed their turbans to their heads, and I sent them to the Sultan's court. Of course, this sent a strong message, and unfortunately, the Sultan wasn't very happy. We'll talk about that later. This is one fine example of my favorite torture technique, the impalement. They don't call me Vlad the Impaler for no reason, I guess. So maybe lots of you got scared by the gory videos from Corvin's Castle. Trust me, I've been there locked up, and it's not pleasant. But those were the times in medieval periods, and in order to understand how good you guys have it right now, it's also a good lesson to realize how bad things were back in the days. So a quick demonstration I want to show you. What I would do with someone that I want to impale usually were criminals or people who would rape women, people who would commit very hideous crimes. So not your regular thieves or beggars. For those, I would just chop a hand off, the hand that they would steal with probably. So I would have a prisoner. In my case, his name, let's say, is Radu, because I was not on good terms with my brother. And you would get a stake, usually around 6-7 meters tall, a wooden beam, a wooden pole, very sharp and pointy to the end. And you would need a few good fit men to make sure the prisoner can be pulled up, and then the stake would be introduced to the back of his body very slowly. And on the tip of the stake, we would grease it with pork fat, not only because it helps slide easier, but because our enemies, the Turks, they were of a different religion, so we wanted to prevent them from getting to heaven. It was a tactic that just helped a very, very small army resist one of the greatest leaders of the Ottoman Empire during those days. Imagine this stake coming through the body of a person. If the technique was done properly, it would avoid all the different organs, the vital organs, and it would come out, and the person would survive for 24, 48, up to 72 hours. Some of them could still live to tell the tale of other people around. So I don't wish anyone this methods anymore, but that's why I'm here to tell you about. You can still have a reenactment if you do visit my Poenar fortress in the middle of the mountains nowadays. The fights with the Ottomans. My good friend Mehmet II, also nicknamed the Conqueror, because he conquered Constantinople, the last bastion of the Byzantine Empire. However, he would not conquer Wallachia. I wouldn't let him. So what happened was that he got infuriated, especially after I sent those messengers back with their turbans nailed to their hand, and I stopped paying tribute. He sends a small army to Wallachia. I capture them, I ambush them, I keep them as hostages. Now he's really furious. He brings up one of the largest armies that Europe has ever seen. My friend Matthias from the Corvin Castle doesn't really help. He keeps all the money from the Pope that wanted to start the crusade in his own pocket. So I have to deal with it myself, which is sometimes the reason why I use these very gruesome tactics. And they call them the scorched earth tactics, when I poison the wells and I burn all the crop fields in front of the attacking army. But this wouldn't stop the Turks. So I used my favorite torture technique on those imprisoned enemies, on those imprisoned soldiers. And I put them on the path of Danube to Bucharest, to Târgoviște, to Poenari, on the way that the Ottoman army was marching. Imagine it was August on the night of the attack. And this was very hot. People were still alive on the stakes, impaled. Imagine 50,000 people coming in to fight me. Some of them abandoned their leaders, retreated, and left the army. The few ones that stayed to fight were ambushed by my army, and we almost got the Sultan in his tent. However, he escaped, and I had to deal with him many times later again. Now, this was another battle that I fought in Poenari. This is actually how it looked like. It looked more impressive than it looks today. And when in Poenari, my brother Radu betrayed me, he came up with another massive army. Someone told him my location. I was there with my wife and a few of my loyal soldiers. When we saw there's no chance of escaping because they had cannons, artillery, and a vast army, my wife committed suicide by jumping from the tower of Poenari Fortress because she wouldn't want to be kept as hostage from the Turks. I decided to stay and fight, at least in her honor. And luckily, that wasn't the case. I didn't die that night because a fellow soldier who is loyal to me sent me a message about a secret passage that I could escape and run into the darkness away from the Turks. I knew I could count on my friend Matthias, who promised to start the crusade. So I put a different, I put backwards the hoofs to the horse. So the Turks would lose tracks of me while I was going to Hungary to get support from Matthias. And Matthias, what does he do? He imprisons me. The rest is history from now on. I think you got enough of me, and I think I have other business to attend to because the night is young, and I think I already had too much blood. So I'll see you next time, and probably we'll see you in Romania as well.
Oh my God, you guys, what just happened? I don't remember anything, but I do see that someone went through my presentation, and that someone is gone now. And I don't understand why my window is open now. It seems that it's horror talk and myths and legends stories of Transylvania is turning to be quite unusual tonight. Well, anyway, since you've been through this Poenari presentation already, I think it's pointless for me to go over it again. So let's move on with our tour after this uncanny episode. From Poenari, we have to reach the final leg of our journey, and that's in SIBIU. So you've seen one of the most haunted places in Transylvania, but believe me, that doesn't even scratch the surface. We don't want to ruin the mystery. We don't want to ruin the surprises. There's plenty for you to discover when you come here. And if you want to cross the mountains from Poenar to go to Sibiu, you have to drive on Transylvania. This road is one of the best roads in the world, in my opinion, the best one. It's absolutely epic. It literally crosses the tallest mountains in Romania, the Carpathians. And it's a sinuous drive down the mountain. It was named by Top Gear one of the best driving roads in the world. And it's absolutely superb. Right here on top of it, it's Bula Lake. It offers a vantage point of observations on the mountains surrounding it. And you can see the hairpin curves of it. It's just a delight to drive on it. We make it a point to always take our tourists there. It's definitely something not to miss. Very exhilarating, full of adrenaline. But its history, it's a little bit gory as well. It was built by the communists. They needed a very fast way to reach Transylvania from Bucharest. And unfortunately, it was built with great human sacrifices. It was only done in 5 years. And you can imagine this wasn't an easy task to build this road with its length. You have to dynamite the mountain. And many soldiers, actually army soldiers, lost their lives, and mostly the youth. Communists were not very nice. They were just bad people overall, and they knew that they were sending them to death when they told them to come here and work the mountain. So there's you will notice some sort of a statue, a tribute along the way, dedicated to the Genists, which were the soldiers dealing with dynamite and bomb. On a lighter note, definitely give it a try. There's plenty of food stalls on it for you to enjoy local snacks while you drive, while you make a pit stop. And we are finally in Sibiu. Sibiu is actually one of the richest city of Siebenbürgen of medieval Transylvania. It was the first city settled by the Saxons colonists, and today is one of the most beautiful and entertaining cities in Romania. We had a close-up with the Gothic church that dates back to the 13th century. And just to put things in perspective, we talked about SIGHISOARA that had a single wall of fortifications and 14 towers. Well, Sibiu had 3 sets of fortified walls and 44 different towers. That's how important it was, and that's how rich. You could have, on the horizon, you see the Făgăraș Mountains, the ones that we've just crossed coming down on Transfăgărașan. Another close-up of the Gothic of the Evangelical Church, which is currently undergoing restorations. And the city is overall a very entertaining city to just walk through and to discover peacefully and in your own way by slow traveling. You can see the mountains again here. Constantly, they have snow on top of them. So all throughout the year, even though we enjoy hot summers, snow will still be visible on their peak. The colorful roofs that you will see on all the Gothic churches in Transylvania were added by the Austrians. I did not mention this, but Transylvania was under Austro-Hungarian domination for a period of time. And that's why we have a lot of influences in our culture and cuisine. I want to draw attention to the most important squares in Sibiu. This is the large square, the focal point of the Saxon community and the place where people come together nowadays. The small square, located next to the large square and dominated by the tower, the council tower, which was the location of the administrative council back in those times. And another thing that you will notice in the small square is the Bridge of Lies. Now, they say that if you stand on this bridge and tell a lie, then the bridge will collapse. You see lots of couples taking photos there. The legend says that couples go there to profess eternal love to each other, and that their love will withstand as long as the bridge will do. We don't know if that's true or not. I personally did go on the bridge, did tell a lie, and it was still standing. So I think it was just a way for guys to get girls on dates. So I have here the small square again in Sibiu, and something that you will notice, without a doubt, if you visit it, it's the eyes on the houses. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. I'm talking about houses that stare at you deep into the soul. And not only that, they feel like they're spying. So if you're strolling through the squares, you have that constant feeling that someone is watching you. They're literally watching you, because we have a webcam here. And what's funny is that they have different expressions. Some of them are lazy, some of them are just bored. This is just a souvenir shop, but I love the expression on its face. Some of them are squinty or just, goofy looking. And this is a more recent house. It still has the windows on top of the roof, but it was redone to the Austrian standards. It's also located in the large square. The purpose of this little windows was to bring air inside the attic, inside the storage facility of the house, but without bringing light in. That's where they would store their meats. And Sibiu today, this is a photo of me. Sibiu today is the place of a lot of farmers markets, of festivals. The large square, if you find it empty, that's a miracle, let me tell you. Coronavirus did this miracle. We went to Sibiu this year and it was completely empty, which is something we haven't seen in a long time. You can watch the sunset on its stairs, stroll at night, and probably stop at a terrace, and also observe the defensive towers and the walls. I have another and the last food stop for tonight. And it would not have been complete without sharing with you what's probably our basic food, staple food. Besides sarmale, you have to have mici. If you meet any Romanian, they will tell you exactly the same. You cannot leave Romania without trying mici once. They are pretty much skinless sausages made out of pork meat. It can be a combination with pork, with beef, with sheep's meat, depending on which region of Romania you are, but they are put on the grill and served with mustard and bread. Absolutely delicious. It makes my mouth water, to be honest. So I'm just gonna skip right to dessert here. And that's another thing that you shouldn't miss. They're called papanaș. And we have it every time we travel anywhere, because the recipe, even though it seems like it's simple, it differs from place to place. They're fried dough with fresh cheese inside and served with sour cream or with just berries jam. I haven't discovered a place where I didn't try them and they were bad. So I'm just gonna have to take my word or come and test them for yourself. This is another variation that I wanted to point out. I only found it in one place. It's papanaș with chocolate sauce and a cone of ice cream on top. If that doesn't look delicious, I don't know what does. So we have reached the final leg of the journey. You've left Sibiu, you've left Transylvania, you've found out a lot about it. You found out about the truth, the reality behind the legend. And you definitely decided that you want to visit more of Romania, not just Transylvania, but the other regions as well, because you feel like there's more to see. And because it's Halloween, I want to leave you off with another folk story from my little book of folk tales. Again, sorry for the quality, but this is the Labyrinth of Evil Spirits. So in a very small Saxon community in Transylvania, a very small village, the people have designed a labyrinth next to their cemetery. And that has been put there as a way of protecting the people against evil spirits and as a way to keep the spirits inside the cemetery so they would lose their way in trying to haunt the living. So this is my protective charm towards you. So it's the cemetery that will keep all the evil spirits that will roam around Earth on Halloween night. Don't worry, I took care of the spirits. They will lose their way in the labyrinth, and you will survive another Halloween. Probably just in time for you to come in person here in Transylvania next year. So thank you so much for coming to our virtual tour, for attending, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I'm eager to find out if you have any more questions for me.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you, Georgiana. I'm going to actually take over the screen here and put up a little Q&A screen. At this point, you can look through the questions and we can get to the Q&A. I always call this part the rapid fire Q&A because there's so many questions that you kind of have to go through them so quick to get to as many as possible. So as you'll see that I have put up a slide that gives you an understanding of how to tip the tour director, which is Georgiana, and she might even split a little bit of this with Vlad. We're not sure, but maybe if he comes back with his drink of blood.
What blood? Did Vlad was here?
I don't know. We saw somebody. I thought it was Vlad, but maybe you didn't see that. But anyway, we know how much time and energy it takes for a physical tour director to put her energy into a virtual tour. So if you're so willing and you would like to tip the tour director, there's some means in the slide that you can follow. Otherwise, I will send a follow-up email tomorrow with some specifics on that. But for right now, if Georgiana is willing and able, we're going to turn ourselves to the questions and go through as many of them as we can. So Georgiana, I'm going to turn it over to you and we'll go from the top and see what you can give in terms of answers to some of these. Oh, Vlad is back.
People summoned me.
So Vlad is going to help us through the questions as well. So you guys go for it.
Right. Before I get into the Q&A, I want every one of you to know that I really enjoyed this tour and I hope you did too. And the only way I will start answering this Q&A is if you fulfill that quiz. Please don't forget about the quiz. It's what makes this experience all the greater. Now you have all the information, so make sure you fill that up. You have a great prize waiting for you. So if Vlad is ready, let's start off with the first question. Did Vlad Dracula had a family?
Well, I can already answer that. So I had Radu, who was called the Handsome because he actually spent more time in the Sultan's court. We both spent time in there. However, he converted to Islam and grew closer and closer to the Sultan, hence all the legends around him. Now, you know me, and I also had two other brothers. Another one named Vlad was a popular name back in the days. It's a popular name right now. And he was called Vlad the Monk. He died, he didn't live a very long life. And also I had another brother called Mircea, who also died young. He was actually killed by the disloyal boyars along with my father, Vlad Dracula.
And in case the question was if he had any heirs, he did. He had only 5 children with Katerina and many other illegitimate children, but one son that we know of, his name was Mihnea the Bad, and he was also killed by Saxons.
I didn't want to talk about that.
He didn't want to talk.
Too many illegitimate.
Is there a lot of walking involved? Is it handicap accessible? I would say it's complicated. So the walking is you know, as much as you wanted it to be, pretty much. Not all the places are handicap accessible. Most of the cities, and they involve walking tours in open air, they are. Not all the towers. So if you want to reach a fortified tower, it's harder. Not all of them are. But generally, more and more places are trying to make it as accessible as they can because they don't want to change the architecture either. So
I can take the next one. Is there newspapers from that era about him? Well, apart from the very few publishings by the Transylvanian Saxons, remember the printing press was invented in Germany, in Europe, and it took some time until it got to the Romanian provinces, including Transylvania. So the very few materials that we had were these pamphlets. Most of the times, the first books that they were printed were the Bibles. They were the most important books for every village, every place around. So the Bibles started off being printed. So apart from the pamphlets, these were the newspapers.
Okay, how many rats were there? Millions. What year did this take place in? I don't know what you mean. Wasn't the first school in Romania located in BRASOV near St. Nicholas Church? That is correct. That's the first Romanian school, but we're not talking about, the Saxons are not included there. What are the beautiful mountains? If you're talking about our video in Sibiu, those are Făgăraș Mountains. How wide is Rope Street?
Rope Street is actually less than 2 meters wide. It's just 1.4 meters, I think.
100 and something centimeters, which in feet?
In feet, it would be around 4
feet.
4 or 5. So it's quite tight.
What was the Jewish population in Romania, and did one exist post World War II?
Yes, however, I think that's a question for another tour.
Time. Yeah. Well, okay, since it is Transylvania, we're associated with vampires and Dracula. So where did that myth come from? And also Vladimir, we understand, we're also a vampire. So Vlad the Impaler was not a vampire. The vampire myth did not start in Transylvania. However, Bram Stoker was a very smart man. So he found out of Vlad the Impaler, of his ruthless character. He found out of Bran Castle, and he loved the way it looked. He thought it was the proper location for a merciless count. And he found of Transylvania and of the myth of the Strigoi, the troubled spirits that come to drink the blood of their victims. So he pretty much wrapped it up, put it all together, created Dracula. He didn't know what he was doing at the time. So he created Count Dracula.
Some of my Romanian fellows still are asking me to come back from the dead and deal with our politicians nowadays.
What is the name of the drink? So we had Palinka, and we had red wine, which is Fetească Neagră. Fetească Neagră is a Romanian type of grape. In direct translation means black girl. It's just a black grape, pretty much. Which Queen Mary? Did Romania had a Queen Mary? Or was it the British Queen Mary who remodeled the BRAN Castle? No. Queen Mary was the second queen of Romania, and she was the granddaughter of Queen Victoria. So she was British indeed. Can you actually go in and tour BRAN Castle? Yes, of course you can. Are they still alive today, or do they still exist? Vampires? I don't know.
They're very much alive.
They're alive. Please spell the name of that beast. It's Strigoi. I will type answer here. Okay, send. What are the names of boys? I don't know which boys. How do you spell those vampires? That's Strigoi. Okay. If Romania's Halloween is November 31st, November 30th, sorry. Why do they celebrate Halloween at the castle on October 31st? Just for tourism purposes. That's correct, yes. How do they punish you? Punish me? Why would they want to punish me? Is King Michael the son of Queen Mary? No, he is the grandson. He is the son of Helena, Princess Helena, who was the daughter of Queen Mary, but she was never queen. Will the 2021 tour have us at BRAN Castle on Halloween? So can we pre-book to attend the party? I think it's a little early to know that answer because the pandemic is still full on. What do vegetarians eat in your country? Are they none? You'll have a surprise. I know that most people believe that Eastern Europe is a place of pork and meat. Romania is a little bit different. It's Orthodox and people are still very religious, and we do pass through periods of fasting, both for Easter and for Christmas. Those are the longer periods of time. So our Romanian cuisine has a lot of vegetarian dishes, actually. Most of them include mushrooms, rice, combinations of beans, and it's actually very flavorful. Lots of soups. Sarmale, as I've mentioned, I've mentioned sarmale that they can be vegetarian. So don't worry, if you're a vegetarian, you'll find plenty of options for you. Just ask. If you find yourself in a supermarket or a restaurant, don't ask for the vegan recipe, just ask for the fast recipe, the one that you eat for fasting. What was spread on the bread? Pork fat, fried pork belly that was blended into a spread. Okay, is this where Vlad was born? So Vlad, we think was born in SIGHISOARA, as his father's house was there. How hard is it to get into the Halloween party at the castle? Is it expensive? You can find tickets if you check out their website. And other details are found there. What is the denomination of churches? Mara, can you help me out here? I don't know what.
Yes, are they Orthodox? What's the denomination?
Yes.
Orthodox.
So Romanians are Orthodox, but the churches that I've shown you today, because we are in Transylvania and they have Saxon heritage, were mostly Catholic or Evangelic or Protestant. Specific name of the brand drink that was shown, it's Palinka. Okay. I have heard that shortly after communism ended, the environmental pollution was a big problem. What is the situation like now? How bad is air pollution? If you're not coming to Bucharest, the situation is pretty good. Bucharest is pretty polluted because of the large amount of cars, but we don't have pollution to talk of that much of. What is the name of town where this church is? I don't know which one. How much would a week cost in and around Bran? I don't know. I mean, I know, but I'm not going to get into details right now. Can you share a recipe for langosh? If you use any type of dough for bread, deep fry it, spread garlic on it, and some cheese. That's in sour cream, but that's the short version. How many days do you need to do this tour? So we've had 11 stops. The least I would say to properly enjoy it would be a week. What is the distance between the cities? It varies. It can be, for example, Bran is 40 kilometers away from Brasov, but then it can be 100 kilometers, 200 kilometers. Is it Owl Tower? That's from the quiz, and I'm not going to answer that. What was the name of the second tower? I'm not going to answer that either. Can we get the name of the white wine, please? It's called Liliac. I'll type it here.
Which means bat.
Which means bat. What was the name of the plum drink you mentioned earlier on? Was it Slibovica? No, that's in Holland. We call it Palinka, but they are similar.
Slibovica, Rakia, Palinka, Suica, they're all variations of Slavic names of the fermented drinks.
We get the names of some of these food wine items. Mara, if I can use your help here, I can provide like a list, and then if you send a follow-up email, they can see it there. Mm-hmm. Okay. I want to go there. Is there a tour? Yes, there is. What is the name of the documentary? Oh, if you just search Hoia Baciu documentary, you'll definitely find it. Just write it here. What was the name of your favorite wine? Is there a certain time of year when Hoia Baciu seems to have more paranormal activity? Well, the scientists cannot agree. Depends on your luck, I guess. It's supposed to be all year round. But some people feel it, some people don't. Who made the coat of arms back then?
It was usually nobles, people descending from royal families, that they would choose different icons and symbols to represent them.
Okay. Is it true that the movie The Nun was filmed in Corvin Castle? That is correct. Is it possible to visit the castle every season a year? Correct. Were women also tortured? Very much so. This is incredible. Georgina, what are some of the top things locals wish tourists would know about Romania? Perhaps people just showing up for Dracula tourism. Yes, Romania is pretty much, Dracula is just a figment of what Romania really is. I wish they would know that Romania has a lot of to offer and a lot of hidden gems in terms of nature, what you can see, where you can go, of the cities and towns that you find if you go off the beaten path. Unfortunately, people that just come in search of Dracula are also victims of mass tourism that focus only certain locations, very limited locations, and their experience might be hindered by this. But if you want more details, I'll be happy to answer in another thread. What's the toilet situation in Transylvania? If you find yourself in a bus with 50 other people, the toilet situation is definitely not looking good for you. But other than that, yeah, there's toilets everywhere. I would like to know more about Katerina. What was her attire like daily? What was her role daily? Was she involved in court? What would she wear? What was typical attire of a peasant female during that time period? Also, what would peasants eat and what would the highborn eat? Katerina was the daughter of a Saxon merchant. But her situation is a little bit particular. Merchants used to be very rich, but her father had lost all the riches. So she actually came from a very poor family. So she would have been a peasant. The typical differences between what peasants eat and what highborns eat is a lot more meat for the highborns, more cereals and agricultural produce for the peasant. And the attire would be just a blouse with a long dress, nothing unlike you would see in medieval movies of those times. Saxons are known for portraying darker colors on their blouses. And here I have a blouse of Romanian inspiration with more red. What is the name of the road through the mountains again? It's Transfăgărășan. Trans means to cross. Făgărășan are the mountains. Okay.
Just think of transfer garrison in English. Try to pronounce it quickly and you'll get it.
Mm-hmm. I've never heard the term fortified church. Is that a church used for military purposes? Is that largely a concept in Romania? Yes. A church used for military purposes. Fortified because it was surrounded by defensive wall. And not only that, the walls are much thicker on the churches themselves. They are all part of the UNESCO World Heritage, and they were used as a hideout for the villagers in case of an attack. What's the name of the bridge? The Bridge of Lies. Are gypsies originating in Romania? Wonderful presentations. We do have the gypsy minority here in Romania. They do not originate here. They are nomadic people that came from the east, from Asian countries. What was the name of the lake at the top of Transfăgărășan Road? That was the Bula Lake. I'm gonna write it here. Do Christmas markets take place in any of the cities? Yes, yes, yes. Especially Sibiu has a very beautiful Christmas market, but in all major cities of Romania, you'll find Christmas markets. It's a major holiday for us. Unfortunately, we don't know what we have in the cards for us this year, but yes, you can visit them for Christmas. Where was that crazy road? At the border between Wallachia and Transylvania. What is the main industry there?
IT.
IT, yeah, IT. A lot of people working as programmers. We produce cars. Dacia is our Romanian brand of cars. All the major industries you would find in any other country, European country.
Yeah, one thing to note about Romania is it has the highest IT specialists per capita in the world. So compared to the total population. So I would say IT, yeah.
And the fifth fastest internet in the world. Any academic book about Romanian mythology, folk tales? Yes, I would recommend a historian. If you Google him, any books by him, he writes about the history of Romanians. Is vegetarian food available? I did speak of that. What is your favorite vegetarian dish? It's the bean soup served with red onion. Delicious.
I would go for
Absolutely.
vegetarian sarmali.
Yeah. Yeah. And and another one, we have eggplant spread, also served with a red onion. Do you have any recommendation on following the trail of Count of Saint Germain in Transylvania? I'm not familiar with him. What worked best against Strigoi? I heard her say garlic and things like facing away in the coffin. What else was there? Iron nails put underneath their tongue. You would just tie them to the coffin, the stake through the heart.
And incense.
And frankincense. Yes, people would use frankincense. Besides Strigois not liking garlic and onion, they didn't like the smell of frankincense. When is the best season to visit? Definitely summertime. Whenever the time is good in Europe, that's the time to visit Romania as well.
I have to say something. Don't come in August. Everybody comes in August. I know it's difficult not to come in August, but you won't enjoy it as much.
Correct. It's the touristy season for everyone. What is the most haunted place in Romania? So we've spoken about the most haunted forest. That's Hoia Baciu and Corvin's Castle. Some people say that Poianar Fortress is also one of the haunted places in Romania.
I would add Snagov Monastery to the list. It's just a short drive away from Bucharest. It's the place in which they say they buried me in there. However, archaeologists undug the grave just 100 years ago and they didn't find any body. Hence all the legends about where is Dracula and where is his body.
Who is the first wife of Dracula, the one who committed suicide? She is not the Hungarian princess. She is. Yes, she is. Her name was Justina Szilágyi. What is the name of the movie you showed when touring the haunted forest? That's a documentary. If you search Hoia Baciu documentary, you'll find it. What types of clothes did people wear in Romania that's different from the rest of the world? I mean, the traditional blouse, it's specific to our culture, and we have certain symbols that you can only find here. But other than that, okay, I think I've answered. Okay, what are some of the previous Romanian names? Georgiana. I don't know, Ilona, Simina,
Laura
Bianca,
as well.
Laura.
No, not Laura, sorry. Raluca.
Raluca.
Is Romanian, yeah.
I don't know if they are all originally Romanian. I would assume not, because in ancient times, the Romans conquered the province of Dacia, which are the ancestors of Romanians. So we do have a lot of Latin influence from them. So
there are some specific, mostly associated with men, because they were the ones that would give usually the names during those times. So whenever you see rulers of medieval Romania, apart from Vlad, which has Slavic origins, and you see it all around, Mircea, for example, is a Romanian name. Radu as well, like my brother, and other names from medieval periods.
When talking about the origin of the name Dracula, Georgiana said devil and Vlad said dragon. Which of the two? Dragon in Latin is called Draco or Dracul. In Romanian, Dracul means devil. So the name Dracula comes from son of the devil or son of the dragon, because Draco means dragon in Latin. So both. Did John's wife commissioned most of the killings since she was more ruthless than John? We don't know. We don't know. If during his life, he was the ruling prince, we do know that she was a little bit more mean than he was, but I don't know for sure.
Okay, we can answer this one. The prices of accommodation and food and drinks in euros, just like a reference, I would say 50 euros for a 3-star accommodation, and for food and drinks, 10, 15 euros for lunch, full course meal, and then dinner, 20 euros.
And that's in a nice restaurant. If you want to eat like snacks and just buy food in unpretentious places, it's much cheaper.
Yeah, I'll get the next one as well, where Vlad and Radu trained as janissaries. Yes, they were sent to the court to become soldiers for the Ottoman Empire. However, the Sultan knew they had more value if he would put them on the throne of Wallachia, because they had royal blood and their subjects back home would listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
So they were trained in all kinds. Vlad was trained in torture techniques, and he was more of a military disciple, whereas Radu kind of skipped the military training and went directly to the Sultan's harem bedchamber.
Mm-hmm. I've answered this one with 2 methods of protection of best against Strigoi. Did only men get impaled? Unfortunately, not. We have tales of Vlad the Impaler putting on stake even mothers or women that were pregnant. So there was no escaping justice.
Yeah.
I noticed, not very proud of that. I noticed on the book cover at the beginning that it said Transylvania, but then underneath it said Transylvania with a Y, superstitions. The spelling is just, the first one is Romanian, the second one is English. The Poinar Fortress is accessible for one normal person with normal physical condition. I can imagine more than 1,000 steps. Yes, there are 1,467 steps. Normal physical condition can get you there. You can take plenty of rest stops. What languages were spoken in this area? Romanian. We have Hungarian, we have German, but they are dialects. Both Hungarians and German are dialects, and you can only find them here in Romania. So not to be confused with the actual Hungarians. Did they ever find Vlad remains? Which was the main reason behind the legends of him being Dracula?
We answered this one.
We answered this one. Vlad, you have descendants in modern Romania. Actually, Prince Charles, he claims to be a descendant of Vlad the Impaler. He traces his family lineage to Vlad Dracula's family.
I'm still waiting for his DNA test.
What was the lie you told on the bridge? Well, just a very common one, like I'm not standing on this bridge. Is a visa required for an American to travel to Romania? No. No visa requirements. Where's the quiz? You should find the link pinned to the comment chat, either Facebook or Zoom. How many days we need to visit Romania? Depends on what you want to see, really. You can spend a few days and it can go up to 2 to 3 weeks. Is English spoken by many? I want to visit but do not speak Romanian, no problem. Younger generation does speak English, sorry. You would probably find that you have problems with the older generations or in the countryside. But my suggestion to you for Romania, definitely try to get a local guide or try to get in touch with a local that can help you out cross that bridge. It'll definitely enhance your experience. Is Suica also a Romanian drink? Yes.
I want to intervene. Suica and Palinka, just a small difference between the spirits that Georgiana actually had some. Suica is usually distilled once, so it's weaker, whereas Palinka, which has the inspiration from Hungarians, is distilled twice, so a lot stronger, and it's meant to help people in the Carpathians, in the mountains, to go through the winter better.
Please review the different peoples' cultures that lived in Transylvania over the centuries, including the Saxons. Do you have a few hours on your hands?
Yes. Yeah, most important, the Saxons, the Hungarians, the Romanians. Yeah, this was it in Transylvania.
Yeah. I have read that there is some scientific basis for vampires. It is linked to hemochromatosis, excess iron production, which makes people sensitive, allergic to the sun. Yeah, I've heard of that too. Since you were part of the Hungarian Empire until the end of World War I, how many Hungarians still live there and how do the Romanians feel about them? We have the Székely region. It's composed of a few counties that count the most Hungarian descendant population. But notice that I've said Székely. They are Hungarian colonists that came here hundreds of years ago.
So they also speak a dialect of Hungarian. And Transylvania traditionally was an autonomous region inhabited by Romanians, Hungarians, German ethnics as well. So it was kind of an autonomous area, although it was in the medieval times incorporated at times of in the Hungarian or Austro-Hungarian Empire. even, yeah.
Oops. Okay. How Pelish Castle was related to Vlad Dracula? It wasn't. It's not related to Vlad Dracula. Pelish Castle is the royal home, royal residence in Romania, built by King Carol I. I know when I visit, I won't go hungry. Possible to post some of the food names mentioned. Yeah, Amara will send you the names. Were the carpeting blacksmith people like sects, or did people choose it? They weren't sects, so they were trade unions. The people did choose it, but if your father was a blacksmith and you were his first son, more likely for you that you would also become a blacksmith. Do you ever go into the forest? It's not necessarily my favorite pastime. What are Dracula's daughters' names?
Because I didn't have any officially.
He's forgotten the name. Are you familiar with Saxon foods like hunklich and palukes? Palukes might be Hungarian. Called it polenta. Yes. I don't know if polenta is Hungarian. I know it's a staple food of Romanians. Hunklich, I've heard of likiu.
Yeah, it's the same. And yeah, polenta, you know, it's not traditional to Europe. Let's be honest, guys. We had to discover the Americas first in order to bring corn in here. Mm-hmm. So yes, it is traditional in our cuisine, but we didn't invent polenta.
Mm-hmm. How are non-Christian individuals treated in Romania today? Just like we treat any other person. There's no conflicts between religion.
Yeah, I personally can tell you because I was born by the Black Sea in a region that was under the Ottoman rule for more than 500 years, and we still had mosques in there, old for 500 years. And I had Muslim friends in school and so on. And there's a Muslim, there's a church, an Orthodox one, a Catholic one. Doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. When I visit Romania, do I use leu, or nowadays only euros are accepted? You will use leu. We don't have euros yet.
Well, you can use it with your card.
It's actually better for you. The conversion works out. If you don't want to be on the train for 14 hours, is there an airport that it's easily accessible? Yes, of course. You can arrive in Bucharest, which is the capital of Romania, but all major cities have their own airport. It's Belci near Transylvania. I don't know what that is. What kind of tours Romanian Thrills offer? Tours of Romania and custom tours, private.
You can find them on the website.
Yeah, you can find them on our website. If you just type it in, just Google it. How good is your public transport? I mean, it's not ideal. There's definitely improvements to be made. We recommend to rent a car if you want to self-drive through Romania. It's cheap and it's actually much better for you because we don't have a very good highway system in place for that. And it actually gives you a lot more flexibility. You can take impromptu stops. If you see a place that you like, you can go for a picnic, you can go off the beaten path. So definitely get a car. Public transportation, you have to stick to the schedule. Mm-hmm. Is Transylvania LGBT friendly? Yes. Did they have sects like you showed the shield type thingies? Yes, the sigils. Maybe you mean the coat of arms? Yeah, yes. What is the elevation of the snow-covered mountains? Is 2,500 and something meters, which in feet is
7,500 feet.
7,500 feet.
Yeah.
How can I find my family in SIBIU? I don't know.
Get in touch with us and we'll help you out.
Yeah. What are the chances I would get you as a tour guide?
Drop us a line.
Drop us a line. What is the main language spoken in Romania? Is English spoken and understood there? Yes, we've already spoken about that. Romanian is our main language. Did Vlad ever venture into the city of Sinaia?
It's a good question. He did not. Sinaia was not built until later in around 16th, 17th century. It was built because a monastery was erected there by another Wallachian ruler. And it's called Sinaia because he actually got inspiration from Mount Sinai, which is the place of pilgrimage in Egypt now. And he wanted a monastery on the route from Wallachia to Transylvania for merchants and travelers. So it was built later.
Mm-hmm. Is a trip to Transylvania safe for solo women travelers? Yes. What is your favorite place in Romania? Transfiguration. Did Hitler conquer Romania? No. Will we be able to view this again? Yes. Is there an interesting story about the rope girl statue? Not one that I have found of. They just put a statue there to gather attention towards the rope street. Is Christmas celebrated in December? Does it follow the Orthodox? No, we don't follow January. Oh, I mean, actually, there are very small communities that go by the January calendar, but generally we follow December Christmas. Do children in Romania learn a second language in their school? Thank you. Yes, we start off with English in first grade, and then we can actually take a second language, and that's normally French or Spanish.
Or German.
Or German. In Transylvania, it's more common to take German. Why didn't you mention about our beers? You can't enjoy meat without a pint of beer. True. This is coming from a Romanian. It's not just Suica and Palinka and wine. We have great beer recipes too. That's correct. We do have beer recipes as well. I thought of just adding something that's more historical to the region of Transylvania, and that will be Palinka and wine.
It's true, and I want to. It's a great question actually. And the thing is, beer wasn't really popular in medieval times. It was later, the first beer factory came in 18th century from the Germans. Of course, they were the ones who really made great beer. And nowadays, however, you can find great craft beers in Romania, all around, in Bucharest, in Transylvania, in every major city, and even in some parts of countryside, amazing crafts beer. So you find something to suit your taste.
Could vineyard brewer tours and or hiking be part of a guided tour? Most certainly, yes, of course. What is a good book to read about Romania? Do you mean like fiction or history?
Fiction you can get with go with Bram Stoker. History you can go with Nagu Juvai, you just wrote.
Yes, there's another book that I'm reading right now. It's called The Historian. It's another version. It's a much more recent version of Dracula, of a girl that discovers the Dracula myth. So definitely give that one a try. How do we know if we won the quiz? We will let you know. What are the best natural area attractions? The Danube Delta by the Black Sea. It's one of the last virgin areas in Europe. Then we have the Carpathian Mountains. Pretty much all natural environment of Romania, regions of Romania are great. And not to forget about the Danube spoilers, the border with Serbia. Bram Stoker used his character from the picture of the boys that you shown. Can make out if you were saying street boys.
Yes, he did a very good research. He actually never visited Transylvania, but he did some good research. He found some depictions of Vlad, his family tree, and so on. And he did use pictures with them when they were young. So he did a lot of good research. Bram Stoker's Dracula actually has a good amount of truth in it. However, it's made to be a Gothic novel.
Is there a zoo in Romania? There are a few left, but they're not that popular.
Fortunately, they're disappearing. And one thing that I would recommend actually would be the Bear Sanctuary that is near Brasov.
It's called Liberty. And what they did actually, we have the largest populations of brown bear in Europe. A quarter of the population is found here in Romania. So there are also many situations when the bears clash with rural life, with the villagers. So what they do, if a bear comes close to the village, it will always go there. It won't go back to the wild because he has found an easy source of food. So they put that particular bear in a sanctuary, and they have a very nice sanctuary outside Brasov. Similar like the forest, they have a lot of space for themselves, and you can visit it if you are in the area.
I want to add something quick to the list of books because I realized we didn't give any books for people who are more interested in the countryside or nature as well. There's a book called Along the Enchanted Way that the British writer that visited Transylvania settled here actually just after communism fell. And it just tells you more about the hidden gems and more about Romania beyond Dracula, if you're interested.
How has COVID-19 affected life in Romania? Like everywhere else, there are great spots in Romania, Transylvania too. Yes, there are. There are a lot of natural hot water springs in Romania, and it's actually, we put them in our tours. We love them. There are plenty of balneoclimateric resorts that we enjoy a lot. And it's home to, I don't know, a third of them are from all throughout Europe, only here.
Yeah, you know, apart from France, who is renowned for its mineral springs and so on, Romania has one of the most famous ones. However, they're not famous now because in communism, they weren't very well marketed apart from the locals. But when Austro-Hungarian Empire incorporated parts of Transylvania, for example, they built one of the largest spas in Europe. It's close to the Danube boilers, and it you know, rivaled places like, it competed with places like Bath in Britain and Vichy in France and so on.
Unfortunately, if you visit it today, you will be very disappointed. So
that specific one, yes, it was left to crumble, unfortunately, after fall of communism. But there are other places.
There are other places who are well taken care of. That's true. How long is the covered walkway? If you mean SIGHISOARA covered staircase, it used to have 300 steps. Nowadays, it only has 176. But that happened because after every sixth step, they added a rest stop, and then they added a few more. It's not too long. It's not that dark. It has plenty of natural light when you walk it. Is it possible to visit the ruins of Vlad's real castle? Yes, after you hike 1,500 steps for it. Did Vlad's mistress have children with him? What happened to them? Yes, they had 5 children together. They were not eligible for the throne, and unfortunately their history didn't make it to history books. Is Palinka de Mare the same as Palinka? Yes, Palinka de Mare means apple Palinka. Where is Romania's best kept secret we don't hear about? I'll leave that as a mystery for next time. Also, does de Mare means of the sea? No, it means apples. Do you need a license to drive a vehicle over there? Yes, of course. Where was Vlad held as prisoner? Which castle? It's from the quiz, so no. I understand Mitch is a very popular dish in Romania. Why is it so popular, and is there any cultural significance behind it? It's very tasty, first of all, so that's why it's popular. It started off as a mistake. A merchant in Bucharest ran out of the skin that he would normally put his sausages in, but because he had a lot of customers that day, he decided to just put straight the minced meat rolled up as a sausage on the grill, and the rest of history, it really took off. What is the closest country to Romania? Bulgaria, Serbia, Hungary, all the countries bordering it. Is there any locations that are off limits without a guide? Yes, most of the nature trails and adventure trails. It said that Vlad's tomb was found in Italy. Interesting.
Let us know.
Let us know. What is one thing to remember when visiting? For example, in Greece, it is rude to wave at someone. In China, a clock is considered an offensive gift. What would be in Romania? That's a good question.
It's rude. It's still rude not to take your hat off if you do enter into someone's home, or it's rude to go to someone's home if you're invited for dinner, for example, without a gift, without a small present.
Mm-hmm. Why didn't you talk about Elizabeth Bathory? She is part of the Hungarian history. Not related to Transylvania in any way. She was just a bloodlust, thirsty ruler of those times. What happened to Katerina? After Vlad died, she died 2 years later in a monastery. Are you both tour guides? Yes. Is it expensive to live there? No. Is the crime rate high or low in Romania? Low.
I also want to mention something here, and probably we'll take a few more questions and we'll wrap it up. It's getting late for everyone. But regarding crime rates, we know some of them, stereotypes of Romania is like, is it dangerous? I've heard of, stray dogs, taxi drivers that are crazy, and people who, pickpocketers who would follow you everywhere. Although it's important to take, just basic precautions, like you would travel everywhere, like don't, show your PIN of your card when you go get money from the ATM and so on. The crime rate is very, very low. And the worst that happens, which doesn't happen often, is small thefts and stuff like that. Like don't leave stuff in your car unattended or with your windows rolled down if you park your car. Just some common sense.
So I think that's a good place to say thank you for this evening. One, I want to thank you two, Georgiana and Vlad. I just can't thank you enough. It's such a wonderful thing for you to be able to share your country, and especially in this time where we have Halloween coming up. It was so fun to have the interaction with Transylvania and those myths and legends. Two, I want to really reach out to the people who are still on and thank you all for joining us on these tours. Without you, the tour directors would have nothing to do and nobody to address and share their knowledge with. So thank you very much. So I'm going to say thank you. I'll hand it over to Georgiana and Vlad to thank you, and then we're going to sign off for the day. So again, if it's dinner time for you all or evening, and I know Vlad and Georgiana, it's, what is it, 2:30 for you? I don't even know what time it is.
1:30.
1:30. So obviously it's in the middle of the night. So we're all over the world viewing this at all different times. Thank you again. Thank you to the audience, and thank you to Georgiana and Vlad.
Thank you so much. Thank you for watching. Thank you for all the people, because I have peeked at the chat a little bit and I have seen a lot of positive comments. So I'm really, really happy that you enjoy it. And our absolute purpose was for you to find out something more about Romania tonight and put it in perspective with the Halloween celebration and its myths and legends. So we had fun. I hope you had fun as well. And it was a really, really good tour. So thank you so much, Mara.
Hope you learned something new, and yeah, thanks for joining in. We just wish everyone will keep their open spirits and will keep their travel lists open, because sooner or later travel will become possible again, and we'll be here if you need us. And thank you for bearing with me for my cheesy little theatrical intervention. I am, however, proud that I share Vlad the same name with the medieval rulers. Maybe I'm not proud of the things that they've done. And again, it probably this stories about medieval life, some of them have a grain of truth, and life was hard. So even with the COVID pandemic and so on, I just want to encourage everyone to be optimistic, because we still live in such great times compared to what used to be back in the days.
Don't forget to fill the quiz.
Yes, and thank you. I think that's the thing we all need to take is positivity. We will be out there again traveling, and we will be able to add locations to our bucket list. So in the meanwhile, we will just keep traveling virtually. So thanks again and have a good night.